I booked the same table we always got. Corner window, third floor, the one where the city lights come on right as the appetizers land. 2 years married that night. I had the ring box from our first date replaced with new studs for her, wrapped in the navy paper she liked, sitting in my jacket pocket like a small, stupid heartbeat. She texted me at 7:52, running 10 minutes late. Don't order without me. I didn't order without her. I waited until 8:40. At 8:41, I looked up and saw her walk in, not from the entrance, but from the private elevator that only VIP guests and restaurant's owners used. Marcus Lane was a step behind her, one hand resting low on her back like it belonged there. She didn't see me at first. She was laughing at something he'd said, her head tilted the way it used to tilt at me. I stood up. She saw me then, and the laugh didn't fully leave her face. It just froze on it. Vivian. Dan, you're early. I looked at the clock on the wall. 8:41. Our reservation was for 8. She said Marcus had pulled her out a partner call, and they'd come straight from the office. That wasn't what it looked like. That they'd talk about it after dinner. Then her phone buzzed. She read it, looked at Marcus, looked at me. Something came up with the London desk. I have to go handle this. We'll celebrate properly this weekend. I promise. She left with him. Same elevator. I watched the numbers climb, then stop. I sat back down. The waiter asked if I still wanted the wine. I said yes. I drank the whole bottle alone, and by the time I paid the check, I had already made a decision I hadn't said out loud yet. At the end of that chapter, I went home and started packing. 3 years ago, Cross Capital was 11 weeks from insolvency. A bad currency hedge had gutted the balance sheet, and 2 of Vivian's biggest institutional clients were threatening to pull out in the same quarter. I built Pulse, the risk modeling engine that let the firm reprice its entire exposure book overnight and re-win investor confidence in 6 weeks. I didn't take equity. I didn't take a board seat. I took one clause. The underlying architecture of Pulse remains the sole intellectual property of Hard Analytics. Cross Capital retains a non-exclusive license for internal use. Any external disclosure, sublicense, or investor-facing attribution requires written consent from the licensor. Core model signatures may not be altered without licensor approval. Vivian had laughed when the lawyers read it aloud. You don't trust me? I trust you completely. I'd said, I don't trust who might come after you. She kissed me and told me I was paranoid. Then she told her father it was the smartest deal Cross Capital had signed in a decade. Turns out paranoid just means early. At the end of that chapter, I zipped the last suitcase and left my ring on the nightstand. By the time Vivian got back from handling London, it was almost midnight. Rosa, our housekeeper, texted me a single line. Mr. Hart, madam is home. She's asking where you are. I didn't answer Vivian's first call, or the second. On the third, she left a voicemail. Her voice tight in the way it got when she was more embarrassed than sorry. Dan, seriously? You're going to sulk over a work emergency? On our anniversary, you're being dramatic. I sent her one text. Ask Marcus if he thinks it was dramatic too. She didn't reply to that. At the end of that chapter, I turned my phone face down and didn't look at it again until morning. She called at 7 a.m. I picked up this time. Her first words were an apology. Where did you sleep? A hotel. You have a home. That home didn't feel like one last night. A short, cold laugh. Because I got pulled into a work call? Dan, when did you get so insecure? I looked out the hotel window at a city that hadn't asked me anything yet. You said you'd celebrate this weekend. You said that the last 3 anniversaries. That's not fair. You left with your hand on his back. Silence. Then sharper. Marcus is a partner, Dan. He walked me to the elevator. You're turning nothing into a scandal. Then explain the elevator you both know isn't for staff. She hung up. At the end of that chapter, I opened my laptop and logged into the Pulse admin console for the first time in months. An email from Priya Shah, our old operations lead, now Cross Capital Compliance Director, landed in my inbox at 9:14 a.m. Subject, Attribution Change Request. Pulse Risk Engine requested by M. Lane Approver, V. Cross. The request asked to list Marcus as co-architect, next generation post-platform, ahead of the firm's Series C roadshow next month. I read it twice. Then I understood the elevator wasn't the real betrayal. It was the warm-up. They weren't just taking a night. They were taking my name off the thing that saved her company. At the end of that chapter, I called my lawyer for the first time in our marriage. I went to Cross Capital's offices that afternoon, not to see Vivian, to see legal. The receptionist gave me a look I used to never get. Before, I was Mr. Hart, the architect. Now I was Vivian's husband, and lately, apparently, the husband who doesn't come in much. Marcus caught me by the elevator bank. Tailored suit, easy smile, the kind of confidence that's been rehearsed in a mirror. Dan, didn't expect to see you here. I'm here for legal. His smile thinned by a millimeter. Some things are better handled at home. Bringing it into the office isn't great for Vivian's image. You'd know a lot about what's good for her image. I'm her partner on the platform side. I make it my business to know her priorities. Then you should also know, I said, she doesn't like being made to look careless. And an unapproved attribution filing on a licensed asset makes her look exactly that. His jaw tightened just slightly. I don't know what you're talking about. You will. Soon. At the end of that chapter, I watched the smile fully disappear as the elevator doors closed between us. Vivian's mother, Diane, summoned me to the Cross family house that evening to sort this out like adults. The whole family was there, which told me exactly how private this was meant to be. Diane didn't offer me a seat. Daniel, you've been married 2 years, and you're already staying in hotels. Do you have any idea how that looks? Vivian's brother, Tyler, smirked from the couch. Come on, man. She runs a 9-figure fund. She doesn't have time to hold your hand every night. Marcus was there too, standing just behind Vivian's chair like he'd been issued a title. When I looked at him, he spoke first, all humility. Mr. Hart, I really am sorry if there's been a misunderstanding. I'd never want to come between you two. I can step back from the platform project entirely if that helps. Diane's expression softened at him instantly. Mine didn't move. Which thing are you apologizing for? I asked. Riding in an elevator with my wife, or filing paperwork to put your name on my architecture? The room went silent. Diane's head snapped toward Vivian. What paperwork? Vivian's face drained. Marcus stammered something about just helping organize materials for the roadshow. I put the printed filing on the coffee table. Approver, V cross. I read aloud. Not approved yet. Not because you didn't want to, Vivian. Because legal told you it needs my signature first. Nobody said anything. I stood. I didn't come tonight to ask permission. I came to inform you. 1, Vivian concealed a serious breach of trust the night of our anniversary. I'm initiating divorce proceedings. 2, Cross Capital does not have authorization to use posts in any external fundraising material. 3, I am formally requesting a compliance freeze on the platform pending review. Diane looked like she'd been slapped. Tyler's smirk finally died. At the end of that chapter, Vivian followed me into the courtyard. Do you have to do this in front of my whole family? She said, voice cracking. What went too far, I said, was a lie, not the leaving. There's nothing between me and Marcus. Then why did you lie about being pulled into a call that never happened? She had no answer. I turned and walked to my car. At the end of that chapter, my phone rang. It was Klaus Renner, the fund's largest overseas limited partner. Klaus didn't waste time on pleasantries. Daniel, I just received the updated roadshow deck. The lead architecture credit has been changed to Marcus Lane. Is this something you're aware of? I looked back at the Cross House, lit up behind me. I am now. 3 years ago, Klaus had nearly pulled his firm's capital entirely, back when Cross Capital's books were a mess even inventory reconciliation couldn't fix. He'd sat with me at 3 a.m. watching the first version of Pulse rebuild the exposure ledger node by node, and said, if you weren't the one running this, I wouldn't sign. That clause in the contract wasn't vanity. It was the reason his money ever came back in the fund. Now Marcus had erased it with a font change in a stock photo. Send me the new deck, I told Klaus. 5 minutes later, I opened it and laughed out loud, alone in my car. They hadn't just swapped a name. They'd rewritten the technical roadmap, the risk taxonomy, the stress test framework, all lifted, all mine, and repackaged under Marcus's headshot. My own history had been reduced to one line: early advisory contributor to platform foundations. That's how you erase a person. No confrontation needed, just a slide deck. At the end of that chapter, I called Priya and asked her to pull 3 years of version history. Priya didn't hesitate. You want to prove original authorship? Not just that. I want to prove they changed the licensed entity without consent. Start the compliance freeze. Their roadshow is in 10 days. This will stop it cold. I'm aware. At 2 p.m. the next day, Cross Capital held an emergency platform review. I didn't attend in person. I remotely triggered the licensor lock built into Pulse's core, a clause nobody at the firm had ever tested, because nobody had ever needed to. In the boardroom, according to Priya, Marcus was mid-presentation, gesturing at a slide with his own name on it, when the system froze and threw an alert across every connected screen. Unauthorized attribution change detected. Display permissions locked pending license review. Marcus insisted it was a glitch. The head of engineering, pale-faced, told the room otherwise. This isn't a bug. It's a licensor-side protection clause. We don't have clearance to override it. Everyone in that room saw my name appear where Marcus's used to be. At the end of that chapter, Vivian texted me, "Unlock it. We'll talk tonight." I replied, "Restore the credit first. We'll talk through legal." That night, Priya sent me a bank transfer record. Vivian's personal account. To Marcus, $9,400, memo, relocation support. The apartment Marcus had just moved into was 2 blocks from the Cross Capital Tower. I also had the parking garage footage from the night of a business dinner 2 months prior, long before the anniversary, showing Vivian reading my text. "I'm outside. Want to come up?" And typing back, "Already left. Don't worry about it," before getting into Marcus's car. The pattern wasn't new. The anniversary was just the first time I stopped pretending not to see it. At the end of that chapter, I built a folder. I named it simply, Year 3, Marcus tried the wounded employee routine at the next internal review. I only joined 2 months ago. I didn't fully understand the licensing history. I was just trying to ease the pressure on Vivian before the roadshow. Vivian, to my genuine disappointment, backed him. He made a mistake. He didn't mean harm. He's young. I asked her plainly, "Do you actually believe that?" She didn't answer. That was the answer. I slid another document across the table. A download log showing Marcus had pulled 8 of my original architecture files at 1 a.m. the night before rebranding them under his name. Priya added the similarity report. 84% overlap between his new platform deck and my 3-year-old technical roadmap. Icons reordered. Nothing else changed. Marcus's composure finally cracked. I was just organizing the materials. "With your name replacing mine," I said, "that's not organizing. That's authorship." At the end of that chapter, Vivian slammed the table and stood. I stood too and said only, "I gave you a chance." Priya sent one more file that afternoon. Audio Rosa had recorded without meaning to, her phone accidentally live in her apron pocket, while Marcus waited at our door for Vivian one evening weeks earlier. Marcus. "Rosa, does Dan even work much from home anymore? Feels like he's coasting off Vivian's success now." Rosa, cold. "Mr. Hart used to work 3 days straight without sleeping. Half of what Madam built. He built with her." Marcus, light laugh. "Is that so? Everyone at the office says he can't keep up with the company's growth anymore." He'd been testing the housekeeper, gauging exactly how much ground he had left to take. Little by little, carrying her bag, driving her home, handling her documents, then narrating me out of my own marriage, the old guard, the dead weight, the husband who can't keep up. It only worked because some part of Vivian already believed it before he ever said it. At the end of that chapter, I stopped being surprised by any of it. Word reached the Cross Capital board before the roadshow could be salvaged. The fund's largest platform asset was licensor lock. The LP relationship with Klaus's firm was in jeopardy, and the man responsible for both the fix and the mess sitting across from each other was the CEO's estranged husband. At the emergency board meeting, Vivian's father, Richard Cross, a man who had never fully approved of me, asked me directly to speak. I laid out 3 conditions. 1. Pulse remains licensed across Capital, but under a revised agreement with joint external review. 2. All future investment materials require dual sign-off from my studio and cross-Capital legal. 3. Marcus Lane's conduct goes to legal with no internal leniency. Vivian's eyes shot up at no leniency. She knew what it meant. She no longer had room to protect him. Richard was quiet for a long moment. Fine. Vivian's face went pale. A piece of her authority had just been signed away in front of the people she answered to, by her own husband, in the room where it mattered most. At the end of that chapter, I added one more item. There's also a personal matter to clarify. My wife and I have entered divorce proceedings. To avoid the project being conflated with our marriage, the license will state explicitly that it is not marital property. The room went still. Vivian said my name like it had never sounded that way in her mouth before. Marcus. Sensing the walls closing in, made his last move in front of the entire board. President Cross, I know I overstepped, but I did it because I care about you. I couldn't stand watching Dan hold you back while you were exhausted, and no one else seemed to notice. The room froze. Vivian's head snapped toward him. Do you even hear what you're saying? He didn't stop. I know I shouldn't say it here, but I can't help it anymore. I let him finish. Then I slid one more folder to Richard Cross. Before joining Cross Capital, Marcus Lane was in contact with Hallbrook Partners, a competing fund. After joining, he forwarded internal fundraising timelines from his personal email. Marcus's face went white. That's not proprietary information. That's for legal to decide. Priya said flatly. At the end of that chapter, Vivian stood and said only, Marcus, you're suspended, effective immediately, pending investigation. I looked at her. Just suspended? She didn't answer. 2 days after Marcus's suspension, an anonymous post appeared on an industry forum. Cross Capital's risk engine at risk, CEO's estranged husband holding firm hostage over divorce. It painted me as a bitter husband weaponizing a licensing clause to punish his wife. I traced the login, temporary CEO office credentials, the ones Vivian had given Marcus, to help manage her inbox. She called immediately, panicked, swearing she hadn't authorized it. I know, I said. This is a result of protecting him for as long as you did. That afternoon, Risk Control confirmed the leak trail led straight to Marcus. The post came down, but not before I'd already archived every trace of its spread. At the end of that chapter, an even bigger story dropped, one clearly meant to be a final act of revenge. That evening, a finance blog ran a piece. Cross Capital CEO's divorce turns ugly. Estranged husband's ties to female colleague raise questions. Attached were crop photos of me and Priya in a meeting room. Framed to look intimate, every other attendee edited out a shot. Vivian called immediately, voice shaking. Dan, I'll handle this. I already had the full, unedited meeting footage prepared. This time, you don't have to. 10 minutes after the story ran, my studio released a complete recording, showing not just Priya and me, but legal counsel, engineers, and Klaus's own representative in the room, discussing nothing but the licensing review. Priya issued her own statement. Married, husband is professor, and anyone repeating the rumor would face legal consequences. Public sentiment flipped within the hour. Reporters traced the story's fingerprint back to the same account style as the earlier forum post. Marcus couldn't hide behind plausible deniability twice. That night, Cross Capital's legal department formally filed against him. Data leaks, defamation, breach of confidentiality, all at once. At the end of that chapter, Vivian no longer defended him, but by then, she'd also lost a chance to look like the one who'd handled herself. Divorce mediation took place at my lawyer's office. Vivian arrived without makeup, in something plain, nothing like the CEO the market knew. Can we not do this so coldly? She asked, as the lawyers laid out the settlement. Our marriage was barely 2 years old. The prenup left almost nothing shared. I waived every asset she'd gifted me after the wedding. You're taking nothing? She said, stunned. No. Her voice trembled. Then why did you marry me? I looked at her. Because I wanted to build a life with you. Used to, I confirmed. She interrupted the reading of the agreement. What if I don't agree to the divorce? My lawyer answered before I had to. You're entitled to contest it. But Mr. Hart has extensive documentation of the relationship's breakdown, concealment, ongoing disputes, and witness separation. Litigation won't change the outcome. It will only make the process worse for everyone. At the end of that chapter, she finally told me the truth about that night at the elevator. The reason I got in that elevator, she said quietly, wasn't Marcus. It was fear. After we got married, I didn't know how to be your equal anymore. You were my safety net. I was scared you'd start seeing every flaw I had. Marcus never saw the flaws. He only saw the CEO. I know how pathetic that sounds. I listened without interrupting. So you chose a version of yourself that felt comfortable, I said finally, and hurt the person who made you real. She broke down completely. I'm sorry for the lie, for Marcus, for not defending you at my parents' house, for everything. I didn't respond. I handed her the pen. Sign it. She stared at the pen like it might cut her. After I sign, will you ever look back? No. Her hand shook as she wrote her name. When she finished, she asked one more thing. Can I have a hug? Just one before this is final. No. At the end of that chapter, I walked out of the room and didn't turn around. Marcus was formally terminated within the month, hit with compensation claim, and quietly blacklisted across the industry he'd been so desperate to climb. The mother he'd claimed needed urgent surgery had never needed one. The money Vivian wired him had gone toward a car and a watch he'd worn in front of me before any of this started. Cross Capital Series he closed 2 months late, on tougher terms and before a joint oversight committee, my studio permanently seated on platform governance. Vivian kept her title. She no longer had the unquestioned authority that came with it. At a client appreciation event months later, she stood on stage and said publicly that Cross Capital had made serious errors in crediting the people who created real value and formally apologized to me by name in front of the entire room. The apology came far too late to change anything. I accepted it anyway, not because I forgave her, but because it was owed and I had earned the right to be owed it in public. Afterward, on the terrace, she handed me a small box, my wedding ring, the one I'd left on the nightstand the night I packed. Throw it away, I said. It means that little to you now. It never meant nothing. It just doesn't mean anything now. At the end of that chapter, she said, I wish you freedom, Dan. I didn't look back on my way out. 3 months later, my studio closed its own independent funding round. Pulse became a standalone platform, no longer tethered to a single client. Priya moved into an industry-wide risk advisory role. Klaus's fund became one of our first outside partners. A reporter asked me, on record, why I'd walked away from the system I'd built inside someone else's company. Because a partnership, in business or in a marriage, shouldn't survive on someone else's silence. I said, it shouldn't need a licensing clause to enforce basic respect. And how do you look back on the marriage now? I thought about it for a few seconds. It taught me that respect matters more than love. Love can survive almost anything you throw at it. Respect leaves the first time you stop earning it. I walked out of the building into a clear afternoon. No missed calls from Vivian. No messages from her family telling me not to make a scene. Just my car, waiting at the curb. The driver asked where to. I thought, for just a second, about the anniversary dinner. The studs and navy paper, the wine I drank alone, the elevator doors closing on the wrong version of my life. Back then, I thought I'd lost marriage. I understand now. I'd only just walked out of a mistake. Back to the office. I said. The car pulled away. Sunlight hit the windshield. I didn't look back.